What's up, guys, and welcome to a brand spanking new episode of the Mana Curve, the fortnightly show where 983 take you through a different world of a different CCG. And this time we are diving back into some Gwent because we had Gwent Open number 2 happen literally just this weekend, and it was a pretty decent spectacle. We've got an amazing panel lined up for you guys. But before we get there, as you'll know, 983 also bring you the wonderful CCG Weekly Show. And this show is brought to you by, who guessed it, the CCG Weekly Show. A big thank you to Tia for this week taking you through all the CCG news. But it's fair to say, guys, we are very much in expansion season. Obviously, you guys who are tuned in for the Gwent will know that Gwent have got an expansion just around the corner. But that's not the only game that's got an expansion releasing or just released. So I'm going to take you through a couple of games. We've got some tasty new expansions, new content you can definitely check out. I'm going to kick off with some Shadowverse. Shadowverse had its 17th, guys, 17th expansion release this week called Fortune's Hand. It brought a brand new mechanic into the game called Rally, which very much relies on builds around tribal style decks. You can get 10 free card packs now if you head over and play the game shadowverse.com, or you can just go to Steam. It's also available there, and the expansion is available in game. Next, we go over to cards, which also got a new expansion this week called Theatres of War. Now, this one is a little bit different because there are only 40 cards released for this expansion. However, there's a whole new game mode called Theatres of War. This brought 6 single-player campaigns into the game, and it's by playing these campaigns that you can get hold of those 40 cards. Honestly, single-player content in CCGs is something that is, in my opinion, completely underrated, and big kudos to 1939 Games for bringing that single-player content into cards. Now over to Eternal. You'll know that a couple of weeks back, we brought to you in CCG News the announcement of the Ardent Depths Eternal expansion, and that is now available. Over 200 new cards in the game, some new mechanics, and some returning faces. But this time, those faces have been plagued by Vara's nightmares. Ardent Depths is available now in-game on Eternal. And that takes you through all the CCG expansion on top of that wonderful CCG news you got earlier today or earlier this week from the mighty Tia. Now, before we jump into the much eagerly anticipated show you guys are waiting for, a quick mention on 983's next event, which is MTGA Gladiator. It's a brand spanking new, well, not brand spanking new, it's a newish format in Magic the Gathering. It's a singleton format, 100 cards, no companions, no leaders, no commanders, just hope you find the best card you want to. And that event is happening on the 11th and 12th of July. All information can be found in the description of this video, or you can join the 983 Discord. More importantly, that event is being casted by Magic the Gathering powerhouse himself, Merchant. It is indeed. I can't wait for it personally. If you want to try and take on Woody in a Gladiator showdown, best of luck to you. Anyway, let's jump into the show, shall we? That's why you guys are here. Let's go join and meet our wonderful panel. Okay, guys, we are in with our wonderful Gwent panel. And as we said, we're talking all about the Gwent Open 2. And there'll be a little bit of spicy expansion chat in there as well. But enough of me. Let's jump in and actually meet this wonderful and pretty gorgeous panel. We're going to jump straight over to Apero. So, Apero, if you could say who you are. If I've said your name wrong, correct me now. And I promise I'll make a note and get it right. If you could say who you are, where people can find you, and who you are in the Gwent community, and then we'll go from there. So, Apero, over to you.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, my name's Apero. I'm a member of Team Aretusa. Been playing since, that's testing me, 2018? Must be 2017, since beta, and been streaming since then. But of course, nowadays, I'm best known for being the queen of beginner Gwent content. I make lots of stuff on YouTube for beginners, explaining basic mechanics, and I'm most often found either on YouTube or on Twitter. So that's me.
Nice. And where can people find you?
There, on Twitter. So,
Apero?
At my real name, Anna J. McDougall. Yeah, no, crazy time.
There you go, cool. Alternative on a mention. And jumping over to a very big name in Gwent and a very big name for Team Leviathan Gaming, Spyro, my friend. Introduce yourself, buddy, and say what your history with the Gwent game is.
Well, I'm Spyro. I've been playing Gwent since the beginning of Open Bet. I'm also part of TLG, or Team Leviathan Gaming, and yeah, I've been playing Gwent since the beginning of Open Bet. I started off on console on PS4. Obviously that got discontinued, so I had to move over to PC. And yeah, I've kind of just stuck with Gwent and been enjoying it ever since. And yeah, I focus more on the competitive aspect of the game. I'm more of a competitive player, I would describe myself as, and obviously a streamer as well. Competitive streamer.
Nice. And because we couldn't get hold of Shamiri, we had to deal with Specimen Gwent instead. I'm only joking. We actually had Specimen Gwent all along. Our last guest is Specimen Gwent. But introduce yourself, mate, and where or who you are in the Gwent community.
Yeah, so I'm Specimen. I've played Gwent for like 3 years. It's not my first like podcast I've done in a long time as well, so a little bit nervous. But I stream Gwent like most days at the moment. Used to play on console, a bit like Spyro, and I mainly play like homebrew decks, sort of like try and play off meta decks, but still try and do decently. That's sort of my vibe. I upload on YouTube as well, so Specimen Gwent on everything really. Yeah.
Nice. I've not been able to catch your streams recently. Are you still the self-claimed king of Northern Realms?
I mean, I'd like to describe myself as that. I think it's a bit of a stretch at the moment, but I've slowly started branching out and actually playing other factions. I only played NR for like the first 2 years of Homecoming Gwent, so slowly branching out.
It's like learning a whole new game now. You're like, there's other factions?
I know.
Ride's a mechanic? But yeah, that is our wonderful panel, guys. And as I said, we are here to speak about Gwent Open and the new expansion coming up. Now, Gwent Open number 2 has literally just happened, and it was an amazing spectacle. It was an absolute brilliant event hosted by CDPR over on Twitch. And we saw Wang ID take the top spot after going through 3 grueling rounds of competitive Gwent. And we're going to dive into the thick of the main event of the Gwent Open, and we're going to dive into the thick of the expansion of it. But what I want to do, and I'm going to come to Spyro first, is just your quick summary thoughts of the Gwent Open. Did you like it? What did you like about it? And any highlight moments for you, buddy?
I definitely did enjoy it. Obviously, watching competitive Gwent gameplay always is something that I enjoy. It was definitely nice to see that a lot of the technical issues from the first Gwent Open or the first Gwent Open of the season was rectified, because obviously in the first one we had a lot of there were a lot of delays. It was a new system that CDP obviously haven't done an online event before. So it's nice to see it went along much smoother this time. And overall, I definitely enjoyed seeing the competitive aspect of the game. It was very exciting games. I do hope that one day we will return back to LAN events, because there are still like issues that every now and then do happen, like disconnects and whatnot. And it's always so sad to see someone lose a game because of a disconnect. So I still would like to see eventually return back to LAN once, like, the whole virus situation is, maybe move past. But for now, I think it's definitely nice we can at least get season 2 underway and carry it on for the time being.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Specimen Gwent, buddy, your thoughts on the Open, highlight moments, anything stand out to you, dude?
I mean, the obvious one's Red Rain, right? Like, the guy just brought the passion. It's just good to watch, man. Like, as someone that I play a lot of Gwent, but even for someone that plays as much Gwent as I do, like, day one of Gwent tournaments is a little bit of a slog, I feel like. There's 4 games, can go for a long time. And if you're just sort of watching Gwent unfold and you're not really too invested in the people playing, it's not as entertaining. Obviously, you've got people like Tailbot that have got like big community followings already. But then when you bring someone like Red Rain in that obviously streams the game, he brings decks that he sort of like created himself and he's well known for. And then you also add in his passion as well. I feel like it just adds a lot to the tournament, really. And really enjoyed watching him. I think he did a great job. So I enjoyed it a lot. I still think they need to somehow find a way to maybe make the games like take less time in a tournament setting. I do feel like at times it can be pretty difficult for like your average viewer to commit to watching a whole tournament. So that's something maybe, I don't know how you'd address it, but I really enjoyed it overall. And like I said, Red Dream definitely the standout for me.
I completely agree with you, buddy. Like, as someone who's literally just had a kid like 6 weeks ago, committing to watch 8 hours of Gwent just is an absolute no-go. It is a case of I will watch 45 minutes now, and then I'll watch half an hour then, and then so I do agree with you, but it's hard, right? Because it's that top 1%, and you're looking at getting into that community that really digest that the competitive Gwent. And coming over to you, Apero, your top thoughts or your thoughts on the Gwent Open 2?
Yeah, I mean, not a lot to add really to what the other two have said. I totally agree about Red Dream. I just think, what a showman, and it's awesome. I think everyone here, we have kind of an entertainment side to ourselves, and it's so nice to kind of see that personality come out in a pro player as well. I will say as well, props to CDPR. The distance that they came from Open 1 to Open 2 in terms of the quality of that broadcast was just incredible. And I thought really, all things considered, it was a spectacular event. Obviously, we got to see how draws and RNG can have its effect, but I guess that's always the double-edged sword of any card game. And yeah, all in all, I thought it was great, but I agree it did run a little long on Saturday as usual. And I also have a tiny human in my life, and that does restrict how much you can get to watch for sure.
They certainly do that, don't they? As well as many other restrictions that get put on as well. But yeah, and obviously Gwent Open 2 is a massive thing, and it's done now, and it marks the, I don't want to say halfway through the season, because technically there's the Masters still to come at the end of that, but we have also got new expansion coming. Like that's something that I think not people forgot about, but obviously everyone was so hyped for the Gwent Open 2. All of a sudden the dust settles, and then you wake up this morning and you're like, wait a minute, there's a Gwent expansion tomorrow. Absolutely, Bob's your uncle. Here we go. So what I want to go jump into, guys, is talk about a little bit about the new expansion coming up. We've had a massive reveal campaign, and I think this is the biggest reveal campaign we've ever had with a Gwent expansion. Almost every card has been shown off before the actual expansion releases. So there's a lot of theory crafting going around. There's a lot of those Reddit warriors jumping to Reddit and jumping on those cards that are OP. There's a lot of the Twitter people doing exactly the same. But what I wanted to do is ask you guys. You guys are all very respectable people in the Gwent community, whether you be competitive, whether you be content creators. So we, like you said, Apero's here for the beginners. And then we also got Spyro, who I know is a very high-level player as well. SpecimenGwent is propping up the foundations decently with a bit of Northern Realms. But I want your guys' thoughts, and I want to know what you guys are looking forward to playing day one. Tomorrow, expansion drops. I'm going to come over to you, Specimen Buddy. What are you going to be building and playing tomorrow when the expansion drops?
I mean, to be fair, like overall, the expansion, there's not that many cards, but I do feel like there's quite a lot of quality like in the mix. There's a lot of things to try out, pushing the different archetypes. Obviously, the evolving cards, devotion decks, where you're just building like one faction. I'm going to start with Northern Realms, of course. And then probably the next place I'll branch out to is Monsters Wild Hunt, and maybe then dabble in a little bit of Spies. There's all sorts to try out, right? And I do like they're pushing these older archetypes from beta with the evolving cards as well. But yeah, Northern Realms is going to be where I start. Then probably a little bit of Wild Hunt Monsters, I think, with some weather.
Nice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how weather pans out. Apero, what are you looking forward to jumping in and playing, or especially maybe spin the question a little bit? What are you looking forward to teaching people to play first in your beginner videos?
Yeah, look, I'm an old school Nilfgaard fan, so you're definitely going to be seeing me mess around with spies and disloyal units. That is my bread and butter. I am pumped to get back into that, and that is probably what some of my early videos will be covering if I have to take a guess. I'm also keen to try out Monsters and Frost, just because of all the changes that have happened. I think there's a lot of room to grow there. We kind of mentioned before the show began, and I'll say it again now, that for me, I'm the kind of person, I don't really like theory crafting. I like waiting for it to drop. Then I like diving in and just going for it and learning as I go. That's my style. So I guess for me, I'm a little bit scared of monsters in a way. So I guess for me, the impulse is to start doing lots of stuff with monsters so I get to know exactly what it's all about. And that way I know better how to defend against it in future.
They definitely, like, people always complain about neck decking, but if you want to learn to play against the deck, you got to learn to play the deck. It's as simple as that. And Spyro, over to you, buddy. What are you looking forward to jumping in tomorrow and smashing your way up the ladder with? You're going to trample over all of your opposition.
I think I got a very similar feeling as Apero. I also really want to start with Nilfgaard Spies. It's a deck that I was very fond of in open beta because it was a very high skill deck where it rewarded players for playing well, and it's something that seems to be coming back with a lot of its roots from open beta. You got those enforcers that have been slightly reworked. You got, I can't remember the name of the new card, but it's basically like what old open beta brigades were. And I'm very excited to try out Nilfgaard Spies, obviously with the new evolving cards, Usurper having a lot of synergy there. Also quite excited to try out some Wild Hunt. Wild Hunt is also an archetype that has kind of faded away a bit in Homecoming, and I'm glad to see it coming back. And it's going to be very exciting to try out those two specifically. When day one, I would say.
Yeah, no, nice. I mean, I'm looking forward to. I've said this story before, and I'll say it again because it's a brilliant story. Marfius, who's behind the scenes right now. I still remember the Crimson Curse PTR when he went in there and was playing Lockdown for the whole thing, just to annoy people who were trying to play the PTR. And that's kind of what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. I'm just going to go and play some Lockdown. I'm going to be like, just see, like, yeah, you want to learn your new mechanics? Nah. to do it without a leader. Simple as that. So that's kind of. Yeah. It's got to be done. It's got to be done. Like I'm the fun taker. Like exactly. I play Mono Blue or Simic in Magic, and I play Lockdown in Gwent. I'm that kind of person, people. But as you guys have all mentioned, there's a lot of returning, not only mechanics, but as Specimen mentioned, artwork as well. We've seen old school leader art make a comeback onto actual cards again. The evolving cards look stunning, each having their evolving stages. The artwork and telling their own little story. There's no secret. We don't need to do a section here on how good Gwent's artwork is. It is the best in any card game. There's no comparison for that. But what I want you to know is we had the return mechanics coming. There are so many mechanics still, though, from open beta that aren't in Gwent, and people are kind of asking for them. I want to know from you guys, is there anything that you played in open beta that you would like to see brought into the game in future expansions and you think could really have a place in the game? I'm going to come to you first, Spyro, buddy.
Interesting question. I don't know. Open beta was very different. It's hard to say because a lot of these things that I kind of enjoyed in open beta would potentially be very overpowered, like in today's world. Like I kind of like strengthening in a way, but also it's a very abusable mechanic, and we have seen it being touched on now with this veteran tag coming. The strengthened mechanic coming back slightly. It is an interesting mechanic. I would like to see some kind of dabble in that. But at the same time, you got to be very, very careful with strengthening because it can be a very abusable mechanic too. There's also things like consume, which was interesting, but again, could end up being a bit overpowered in homecoming days. Other than that, I'm not entirely sure. I would also, I think, like to see some added consistency in some aspects of the game. Right now, there is a lot of, I feel, draw dependencies in certain things. I would like to see maybe some factions getting some better faction-specific tutor cards, perhaps, because that's devotion coming as a mechanic. If you have a very important tool in your deck that you can't get access to because you can't run Royal Decree because you're trying to make use of devotion, then you could miss out on a key aspect of your deck, and it could feel a little bit bad to miss out on.
Yeah. I mean, you could argue that Echo is like the first little baby step towards that, right? But apart from that, is based on graveyard tutoring, but still it's a tutor card based on a faction, so we're taking baby steps towards those. Specimen, buddy, what you return mechanics wise, what would you like to see brought in that we haven't seen in homecoming yet but was in open beta?
I mean, one thing that sticks out to me is cards like the old Bloody Baron that you could basically build your whole deck around. It's not even necessarily that competitive. But what the old Bloody Baron used to do is he used to buff himself for every unit you kill. So just like those kind of cards that you can build whole decks around, I feel like cards you could compare it to are like Kel'Thuzlis in the current game. Those sorts of cards you can just go all in on, build a whole deck around, have a bit of fun with. I feel like just more of those cards, which I think there's a few in the expansion as well. So more cards like that I think will be good. And like Spyro says as well, with more like thinning cards essentially in the factions and just hopefully making that draw dependency a little bit less, because that's maybe one thing I don't love about the game at the moment. A lot of the time it comes down to who draws their gold cards, etc. And maybe more tutor cards would help fix that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's always going to be the case with Gwent, right? Because it has such a small deck size, like 25 deck size, and they're already being neutral thinning in the game with mulligans as well. It's a very low percentage. You don't get to find the card you don't want, but when you do, it's pretty punishing, right? Because you know that your opponent has probably found the cards they want. But Apero, return mechanics, what would you like to see brought into homecoming?
Yeah, okay. I was thinking about this, and I think there are two things I would want to see come back. So we're seeing spies kind of come back here with all the little pings, but what I would love to see as well is Henselt machines. I would love Henselt machines to come back. I know, minority opinion, but that was another one of those decks that I just loved playing and destroying with. And the other thing I would love to see, gotta say it, Camby.
There you go. Yeah, why not? Why not? I mean, I will say though, you guys have all missed the key one, which is Mill. Like Mill has to come back, right?
Oh
right?
God!
Yeah, it has to. Like Mill's the only fun deck you can play in any card game. Like simple as that. But I think we'll leave it there on that one before I get beaten up. But no, so yeah, Gwent expansion, obviously, for those who maybe are new to the game, is dropping pretty much the day you're watching this. So if you're watching this, hey ho, there's a new expansion in Gwent. Definitely go and check it out. The pre-orders will be gone by now, but there'll be plenty of other orders that you can get in there to booster your collection. But expansion out the way, as we've said many times, Open number 2 has just happened. It was awesome. We've spoke already about what we liked about it. We're going to kind of really dive in a bit more now and chew the fat on those topics. And the first one being what everyone has mentioned, how much slicker this production was than especially day one Gwent Open 1, which we know, I mean, I was very vocal. I took to Twitter and said that I was like, this is a joke. CDPR are a massive company. How can this happen? There's an argument for both sides. We're not going to go there. All I want to say now is it is a lot slicker. But the question I want to pose to you guys, and I come to you first, Apero, is with it being so much slicker, do you think that there's a chance that we end up seeing the end of LAN tournaments when it comes to opens rather than moving to online?
I hope not. I get why they might. There are potential benefits. Okay, it allows you to bring in people from all different corners of the world, maybe in a way that you couldn't otherwise. But on the flip side, of course, there are some people who then you don't get to see. For example, we had a few, empty camera slots because of connection issues. I personally think there is a level of hype that comes with a live event that you just cannot bring with an online event. Love it or hate it, convenience, money. I know there are plenty of reasons why holding the event online has its benefits. Still, I can't help it. I just don't get as hyped without seeing them sitting at those desks with the headphones on, getting nervous. That's part of the experience for me. And personally, I'd love to see the live events come back.
Yeah, it's an atmosphere, right? It's an absolute atmosphere. And we spoke about this 2 episodes ago with the previous Gwent panel about some people are big game players like Holloman and Tailbot, and feeding off the atmosphere of being opposite your opponent. Some people wouldn't play off that, and playing at home on your own in a competitive environment feels a bit alien to them. But definitely can't be a live event. But Specimen, what are your thoughts on it, buddy? More specifically, how do you find the online events compared to the LAN events?
That's a good question. I feel it's like I say with the linking back to with Red Rain, like when you're watching Red Rain, you've got like someone to properly get behind. When it's like a tournament, like when they're there in person, I feel like it feels more you can get to know the person potentially a bit more. Like the players might play off each other a bit more. Like you say, you've got that sort of playing against each other rather than 2 people looking at their computer screens. So I do feel like it's just not quite the same. Obviously, I feel like a strength of CDPR's tournaments as well are they've got the whole atmosphere going on with The Witcher, the tavern settings. Some of the venues have just been pretty spectacular. Obviously, even things like interviews are just a lot more awkward to do over the internet as well. Whereas if you're just sat next to someone, I feel like, definitely for me, you want to keep them in person, get the vibe, nice, and everyone enjoying themselves. Whereas when it's online, it's obviously a bit more difficult as well. Obviously, a few disconnects even though it was much smoother, which is just the last thing you want to see, especially when it's Magpie who's bringing some of the most interesting decks of the weekend. It's a shame when obviously a whole series goes out the window kind of because that happens. So
yeah. And Spyro, buddy, your thoughts on the online versus LAN?
I completely agree. I do like to see it happen live, and obviously I'm glad that we are at least having these opens resume. I was starting to get worried at a certain point, wondering, okay, we have 2 opens already lined up. We're going to start qualifiers number 3. What's going to happen with all this backlog? So I'm glad we actually getting them started, and I think online is definitely the right move to get these things going for the time being. But I would really like to see them when they can, obviously go back to online event or LAN events rather, because as Apero said, you lose out a little bit of that sense of spectator value when you don't see the players at the event at CDPR headquarters. It's different feeling. It's much more exciting for me as well when you get to see the players at the full on at the LAN event rather than at home, because when they're at home it kind of feels like you might be watching almost a regular stream or whatnot in a way. But I hope it does eventually go back. Also, the disconnects are always really heartbreaking to watch, because a player puts in so much time to qualify for these opens. They put in the blood, sweat, and tears to get there, and then to lose out to a disconnect feels so bad, especially for the player itself. So I really hope that when eventually it goes back to LAN events to mitigate that kind of problem that could happen.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with everything you guys just said. Obviously, football's just returned in the UK, as Specimen will know, and it's kind of similar. Like the football's there, but there's no crowd, and it's you're watching it and you're like, this is fun, but it's missing something, and it's kind of that spectator value. And I get exact same thing, that when you're watching the LAN events, there's so much more of a spectacle. It's an event rather, like you said, than a stream. So yeah, I
really feel like. Thank you. I really feel as well that it's not just about the players, it's also about seeing the casters in the Masters, also the analysts, but seeing them live, it does bring a different feeling. And as Spyro said, it looks like they could just be at home, they are at home on the computer, but they could just be streaming. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, just another day seeing, a stream from Jagras or whatever. But then suddenly when you're seeing them there in person, you're seeing them talking to each other, it makes you feel more like you're there, and it's kind of, you're able to have that sympathetic, I guess, feeling a lot more. So I just wanted to, jump onto what Spyro said there and just add that on, because I do feel like, we talk a lot about the players, of course we do, but it's also seeing people out of their streaming elements, the presenters, the hosts, the casters.
And it also offers the opportunity, right, for the Gwent community to go there. They've done that in the past, where they can have these Gwent meets, and that's a great opportunity for the Gwent community to get together. Now, obviously, something that you've all spoken about, all of us have mentioned, all of us loved him very much. I've heard that the Red Rain t-shirts are sold out on the CDPR store. Don't go there. You can't get them anymore, guys. They are gone. But Red Rain, what an absolute hero he was. He brought light to he brought comedy, he brought humor, he brought like grounded human approach to a competitive scene. And otherwise, I don't mean this with any disrespect to any player, but sometimes, especially when they're online, a stale environment, right? It's like, it could be a cardboard cutout sat there because they don't move. They just literally, they're so focused. And Red Rain was very animated. Also, on top of that, the first American, and you think about how many American streamers and Americans play Gwent, the first American to qualify for competitive Gwent event in 3 years, which is huge. So, Spyro, straight off the bat, Red Rain, how do you think he played? How do you think he done? And also, I'm guessing you enjoyed watching him, but do you think we'll see him at future Gwent or Gwent Open events?
I mean, anything's possible. It's definitely something that we could see in the future at some point. Overall, obviously, it was his first Gwent Open, so there's always going to be that element of nerves. And yeah, he was definitely, as you said, a lot more animated than a lot of opponents. I think that obviously when you're playing at this level, most people are completely. You saw a lot like, I'll give back an example of Life Coach. The whole like Life Coach block out everything around you type of expression, and that's kind of what a lot of players tend to do, is they just try go hyper focus mode and completely disconnect themselves from the outside world and put them and fully invest themselves in the game. And it can be difficult for players to just take a step back sometimes. Remember, it's just a game, and try have fun, which obviously Red Ram seemed to do, which was it was definitely something that I think a lot of people appreciated, and it was very fun to watch his games.
Yeah, definitely. Apero, your thoughts on Red Rain, the mighty man?
Well, I'm obviously also TA, so I'm a huge fan. And yeah, I mean, he was just wonderful. I guess there are different types of entertainers. We have seen in the past Tailbot, for example, the Tail God, bringing a very kind of, I guess, what's the word? Not flat, but I guess, what's the term I'm looking for? Just that type of humor, very kind of even-keeled. Dry, yeah. Thank you. That's the term I'm looking for. That very dry humor that we can all really appreciate. But this is a very different type of entertainer, and it's so much fun to see. I think Spyro kind of touched on it there, but also it's not just about them being in the tournament environment. That means a lot of players end up being very focused and not entertaining, so to speak. Obviously, their focus should be on the games more than on the audience. But it's also, I feel like it's part of the personality of the people who end up being great at these kinds of card games, is that they do tend to be very focused, very analytical, they're very into optimization. The fun for them of the game comes from optimizing decks, optimizing plays. That is where they derive enjoyment, not necessarily from the emotional highs and lows, like for me, for example, and I'm sure also for you, Woody, and our other guests as well, and to some extent.
Yeah, and Specimen, I know you're a big fan. I think you were the last person to get the very last Red Rain T-shirt, so congrats on that, buddy. But your thoughts on Red Rain overall, dude?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've gassed him up already, but it's just like yesterday I was like, right, Red Rain's playing at this time. I like built my day around it. I was like, cool, I'm watching Red Rain at this time. I don't think I've had that with a Gwent tournament in a long time. I've not been like, oh, bang, this person's playing, that person's playing now. Obviously, he's a streamer as well, so he's got the benefit of me having like watched his streams, interacted with him many times. But yeah, it's just nice to have someone to root for. And I think the fact he bought his Gord Mahak and Forge deck as well was just great. And I'm so glad he won with it as well. Like, I feel like it's nice if imagine if he won the whole thing and he won it with Mahak and Forge, it just would have been like the icing on the cake. So as someone that like when I play, I love like just building decks and playing them. I really respected that he brought that, and it wasn't just necessarily like bringing, the most flavorful meta decks. He won a game and he did it, playing what he likes to play. So I really rated it.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the best deck builders in the game. Like, he's been solely responsible for many metas. The whole Hyperfin meta that came around, that was him. Like, he made the Hyperfin meta, and he's an incredible player. I loved how, like, I don't mean this horribly, giddy he was. Like, when they were interviewing him afterwards, he was so excited just to be chatting to Berza. And it's just like, this guy, you can't not love the guy. You can't not root for the guy, because he's so passionate about it. And that's come across throughout every game he played and his interviews. And it was, like you said, it's a breath of fresh air. And I hope we get more more players, because effectively he's a content creator gone pro. And I hope we get more competitive players who bring that kind of atmosphere to the table. But
I want more victory dances, personally.
yeah. Everyone, I think they should do that before they like. Application is like, if you want to go pro ladder, what's your victory dance? Like, rather than just ticking that box in the menu, you just say, what's your victory dance? Send us a GIF.
Sorry, I was going to say, when they bring back the video intros, they should make the victory dance part of the necessary information, like name, age, victory dance. Show us, what is it?
That's it. CDPR, if you're watching, sort it. Get on it now. As we said, Red Rain, the first Western player to qualify in 3 years for a competitive Gwent event. Now, obviously, Gwent is now available on Steam, which some people said, it's not going to make a big difference. It's made a huge difference with the Steam release. It's had a ton of new players coming into it. I don't stream the game much, but when I do, lots of people coming in and saying, hey, I'm a new player to the game. Do you think we're going to see a big influx coming now of Western players, not solely off Red Rain's inspiration, but just the fact that these content creators now, they've had this 2-3 years in Homecoming, they're getting to that competitive stage now, and a lot of these players are really focused in on getting to the Open. Do you think that the Western audience really booms up and starts to counterbalance the Asian and the Polish and the Russian audience? Coming to you first, Spyro, buddy.
Interesting question. I mean, the NA side of things in terms of Gwent's like viewership, stream, everything. Like, if you look at the streaming side of things, a big majority of, I'd say, the biggest Gwent streamers are actually from NA. So like a lot of the audience is actually NA based, but I'm not sure. The competitive aspect of Gwent has for the longest time been very EU dominant, and obviously also Asia dominant as well, with China being very dominant in Gwent competitive scene. So it's gonna be maybe it'll give North American players more motivation to say, well, if Red Rain could do it, then we can do it too. And then maybe we'll get more players actually taking the competitive aspect of Gwent more seriously. Not sure how much it's going to influence the player base itself, because like I said, there's always been a very big I would say North American influence in Gwent in terms of like the public as viewership in terms of Twitch viewership and YouTube a lot of the time, but I think it might inspire or motivate people to give it their best shot from the NA.
Yeah, nice. Apero, coming over to you.
Yeah, I personally think there's no doubt that bringing Gwent to Steam and also to mobiles, of course, has expanded the audience, has expanded the player base, I should say, not the audience, expanded the player base into North America a lot more than perhaps before. I agree with Spyro insofar as I don't think Red Rain will necessarily encourage more people into the game. What I do think is that those people who are already in the game could be like getting a bit more of a surge of enthusiasm, let's say, by seeing him there. And I think this is the case. This is always the case when you see someone representing your country or your region in the competitive scene. It's one of the reasons why I find it most exciting when there are people from all over the world in a tournament. You know, if we had a tournament with, 7 Polish players and 1 German player, I'm sure it would be wonderful, but I probably wouldn't get everyone as pumped just because there wouldn't be that element of people rooting for their own region. And that is something that I think can't really be undervalued. So hopefully, as someone who does love talking to beginners and helping beginners, I really do hope that Red Rain being there does carry their enthusiasm forward, because we do often see that little, once people get over the beginner hump, so to speak, they often do have that bit of a slump. And maybe seeing him gets them through that. If so, great, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, and like you said, having a variety of nationalities represented, because this is the first time UK's been represented for a long time, right? Specimen in Green Knight. So like, I watched Green Knight's game because I was like, he's from the UK. I want to support the UK. Like, so I watched him. Unfortunately, he come up against Tail God, as you said, game 1, who was like Tail God, who had the hottest Vindaloo and was absolutely on fire. But yeah, it was a good matchup, and like you said, having nationalities to support is definitely a nice thing. Specimen Gwent, buddy, your thoughts on the Western audience growing?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, I have no idea like if it's gonna what sort of the player base is like in America. I know like the biggest sort of Twitch audience, generally speaking, is like European time more than American, I believe. But certainly there's a lot of new people coming to the game, right? Obviously with mobile. I've had like someone I know it's like, oh yeah, I'm playing this game. I'm like, oh yeah, tell me about it. Obviously knew a bit already. And then also with the expansion, you've got obviously a massive audience for just the Witcher universe in general, and like Gauntro Dim being such a divisive character in the Witcher series. Like, a lot of people have been like, oh yeah, it's Gaunter. They see it and they're like, okay, I'll try this out. Things like the Wild Hunt coming back. I've had a few people in my Twitch chat sort of, oh yeah, well, I've seen Wild Hunt's coming back, so I'm looking to come back. So I feel like Gwent's got a lot of people over the last like 3 years. Obviously, the game's changed a tremendous amount. It's got a lot of people that don't play the game anymore that could come back into it. You've got that new audience with mobile. Obviously, we lost the console side of things, but the mobile audience is only going to grow as well. So I would expect it to just keep going from strength to strength at this point, hopefully.
Yeah, no, definitely. And as I said in the previous Gwent episode, I honestly think Gwent will be fighting for a top 4 spot in the bigger CCGs, digital CCGs going. Like, it's in that good of spot right now, and it's really taking what it's got already and steamrolling forward at a really nice pace. And I think it's a force to be reckoned with. Now, we did see in Red Ram's first matchup against, apologies if I pronounced this name wrong, Iliaxa?
I think it's pronounced Iluha, I believe.
Ilua. Okay, Ilua. Thank you, Spyro. So in Red Rain's first game, which was an absolute showdown, it was Rocky versus Ivan Drago all over again. It was in every sense in terms of nationalities, as well as how close it was. And it was a great matchup. But ultimately, Game 5 came down to a rather tasty size of RNG in the fact that, trying to set the scene for people a little bit, Red Rain had played his Masquerade Ball for the second time, and the only way that the opponent had the answer for it would be through finding artifact removal on Shoop. He didn't. He went on to lose the game. If he found artifact removal, it's pretty much guaranteed that he would have gone and won the game. What I want to propose to you guys, and I come to you, Apero, first, is now that element of RNG, that slice of RNG, watching that, did you find that added attention to the game? Did you watch it and think, was you thinking, oh my God, is he going to find it? Is he going to find it? Or do you feel like that kind of RNG has got no place in a competitive card game?
Well, I always tend to fall on the entertainment side of the spectrum when it comes to entertainment versus consistency. So I'm always going to say that I think it's a good thing overall, and especially when it comes to events. Would I say the same thing if I were actually competing for money? Maybe not. But certainly as a spectator, I like it. I like that it does add tension. For me, I was going, oh, come on, show us. And we could see him hovering over each card, just hoping that he would see artifact removal. He didn't see it. And you feel the kind of like, oh, and I mean, he didn't, Red Rain, did not win by that much in the end. So it ended up being close regardless. But Certainly, I think that kind of thing is it's just part of card games. You know, you pay a cost to run Shoop, you have to run a singleton deck, and I think a little bit of RNG is fun. It's not like every game was decided by Shoop. I think if we were seeing like a Shoop meta and this was coming up over and over and over and over again, then, you know, maybe I would have a different opinion. But from time to time, why not? You know, let's play, let's roll the dice. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Specimen, buddy, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, look, it's a card game. You're going to have a certain amount of it. It's finding the balance, right? I feel like I'm not the biggest fan of Shoop in general, but that was a great moment. You know, that was just with Apero. I was sort of fist pumping. Obviously, I was wanting Red Rain to win. So when he missed it, it's like Apero said, it was hovering over each card slowly. The tension was building. And obviously, Red Rain's doing this beforehand. You know what he's thinking as well. So I love that side of RNG. I feel like, for me personally, the thing I dislike most is just like about draw consistency with like RNG of like, and I think again, I mean, I hate to be the person to talk about artifacts, but artifacts are kind of a big offender. It's like, did you draw the Pella? Did you draw the artifact removal? No, okay, you probably lose. If you did, you kind of win. That sort of RNG is more like what I dislike. I feel like those sort of 60% chance hit and miss is nice to have in the game. It's more like the did you draw this card at this time, which is obviously always going to be a thing, but those more sort of like binary related RNG fiestas are sort of what I hope we can move away with. And actually, while we're talking about it, with weather, they've decided to remove weather clears, which hopefully is moving away from that sort of like, do you have the weather clear? If you do, you win. If you don't, you lose. So hopefully we can keep moving in that direction and sort of have that RNG in a fun sense, but then like the more oppressive and like feels bad kind of RNG can leave the game a bit more.
Well, you nailed that, mate. I reckon you've been writing that down for the last hour, haven't you? You've been making notes on that. You absolutely nailed it. It's top job. Spyro, buddy, your thoughts on that slice of RNG and its place in the game?
I mean, this is a topic I could probably talk on about for hours and hours because it's a topic that is it's RNG versus consistency. You know, there's pros and cons to both. I just want to first highlight in that game you spoke about with Red Rain versus Iluha. Although the Shoop did play a very important role in that game, I feel like, because I was analyzing the game quite intensively with one of my teammates, Gravesh, and there were definitely a lot of avenues that Iluha had that he could have altered the outcome of that game, I think. Despite missing Shoop, I think there were lots of ways he could have actually still won that game. So I don't think the game was decided by the Shoop, but had Iluha found that Shoop, he would have been able to, I guess you could say, get away with some of these maybe questionable lines, so to speak. But I do feel like you need to find a balance, right? Like if the game is too consistent, then you kind of start watching chess. And if you're watching chess, maybe it's not the most exciting thing in the world. It's the most consistent thing, but it might not be the most exciting thing. But at the same time, if it's too inconsistent, then you're having a big dice roll, and it's not, to some extent, you still want to see, better players being rewarded for playing better. So it's a balance you need to strike. And I feel like one of the biggest aspects, as Specimen was referring to, is draw RNG can be quite punishing in Gwent. There are a lot of cards that require very specific answers, like scenarios and bomb heavers, for example. And should you not find the answer at the right time, you can just lose the entire game just because you missed out on that card at that exact moment when you need it. And that can feel very, frustrating to just lose out on the game, just on the spot, nothing you can do just because you missed out on that certain answer at the right time. And I think there's a little bit of a balance that needs to be struck between, too consistent and too inconsistent, I guess.
Yeah, no, completely. It's literally impossible, right, to get rid of any RNG because you draw cards. Like anytime you're drawing something off the top and you're shuffling something, you can't guarantee to find set cards, right? But I honestly, I agree with all of you guys. I actually quite like Shoop in the game because it does run a risk and reward kind of like archetype such, right, where you have the singleton, right, but you get potentially the reward of playing a card that you need to play at a certain time. But yeah, I do agree with the card draw and finding certain cards. Mostly, as Specimen said, binary interactions can be some things that make me end up not wanting to play Gwent for a little while when I feel like there's only one answer to one said thing. But that's my opinion, and honestly, no one really cares about it anyway. Your guys' opinion is bigger and better. So, but that's that's pretty much gonna wrap up this episode, guys. We've gone through Gwent Open 2 and we've gone through expansion, and expansion is here tomorrow. You've heard how excited our wonderful panel are to go and check stuff out, and we know that Spyro and Specimen, I'm sure, are going to be streaming tomorrow. I'm not sure if Apero is going to be streaming tomorrow, but they're definitely going to find some beginner content, I'm sure, very soon. But before we go, we want to let our panel say goodbye, and if you guys could also let them know again, let the community know where they can find you, and yeah, so we're going to head over to Apero first.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, it's pretty easy to find me on YouTube. That's probably the easiest place to find me. You just type Apero and Gwent and search, and you are very likely to find me. There aren't a lot of me around, of my name around. Other than that, yeah, that's all there is to it. I'm very active on Twitter, but yeah, I won't be streaming, but I will be releasing some videos. I've actually already released a video today yesterday, I guess, when this is showing, about Veil and Rupture and how they work. So if anyone's a little bit confused about those two new keywords, you can definitely look that up on my YouTube channel. Nice.
Spyro, buddy, where can people find you?
Yeah, basically you can just type in Spyro_ZA. Some avenues like Twitter, I've got like 2 underscores because apparently single underscore is already taken. Yeah, so just you can just type in Spyro_ZA on probably most platforms, and you'll probably find me more or less. I probably stream I stream pretty much every single day. So
you're an animal, is streaming all the time, like so consistently for so long. I rate it so much, man.
Yeah, I actually looked at my hours. For the last year, I've streamed 2,054 hours of Gwent. Yeah, I think I need help.
No, it's a great effort. It's a great effort.
And yeah. Specimen, buddy. Oh, sorry, Spyro.
No. I'm just that's pretty much it.
Cool. Spyro_ZA. And Specimen, buddy, where can people find you, champ?
Yeah, at SpecimenGwent, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. Okay.
Simple as that, eh? Short, sharp, and sweet, mate. Just like the hair. And if you guys are interested in finding me anywhere, sometimes I stream Gwent, sometimes I stream Magic. I play whatever I want, really. To be honest, you can just find me at What's Up Woody any way you want to. But again, a massive thank you to our panel for taking time out of the day to come and chat to us about Gwent. We have to wait now until August for Gwent Open number 3. Maybe there's a Masters in the middle of there. That's not a leak. Don't go crazy and say that's a leak. That's just me speculating. Maybe there's a Masters in the middle of there. Who knows? But in August, I'm sure we'll be back chatting about some more Gwent. But until next time, guys, have a great day, morning, evening, whatever it is, wherever the hell you guys are. Just make sure you guys stay beautiful. Until then, goodbye.